All right, welcome once again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight on your brain. This time, continuing with our conversation about abortion and various other things that connect to it. Last time we left off, I accused Sam of being a Nazi, so let's take it from there.
Not the first time.
It's not a it's not a good internet debate unless somebody accuses somebody of being a Nazi.
Our German flag is right over there. You want me to put it up real quick?
Let's hold off on that a second. When I first presented my master's thesis, not presented, for final uh, for the final or anything. It's just when I presented it in a class as, okay, this is what my master's topic is going to be, and here's the start of it with a 20 something page essay, and this old lady accused me of being a fascist, so that was delightful. I laughed.
Nice. I'm trying to think where we should pick up because I'm even debating whether this is going to be episode 16 or a continuation of episode 15, even though
both. Yeah. Well, I think we're going to get into some other things. Let me start off because I guess I should qualify and be moderately less snarky. I have become annoyed with people saying, well, that's just a slippery slope argument. Well, yeah, that's not inherently bad. A slippery slope argument can be a logical fallacy, or it can be pointing out a logical gap in someone else's argument.
Well, and also with the slippery slope, sometimes the answer is, why do you even want to go further down that slope, even if it's not all the way to the bottom?
Yeah. Or kind of where I'm usually going with the slippery slope argument is, where's your guardrail? What's your limiting principle is the fancy term a lot of people use in these kind of logical or political debates. So as an example, I kind of snarkily gave an offhand comment about the gays last time, and here's what I meant by that is, I've mentioned the gay marriage Supreme Court nonsense and the superfluous and idiotic debates around that, with people talking past each other. And I'm trying to remember his name, Ryan Anderson. He's with the Heritage Foundation, and he's a super conservative Catholic. He will routinely get in kind of flame wars talking theology on Twitter. Not just the kind of standard Christian versus atheist yelling at each other on Twitter, but he'll get into it with other Catholics who aren't conservative enough, or especially Protestants.
So is he fighting with the Pope right now?
I don't know. I haven't
the Pope's woke,
him.
So
I haven't followed him in a while, but that'd be delightful. Maybe I should check in on that. But he's a policy guy, so he will happily get into a theological debate with you about gay marriage or abortion or whatever. But if he's kind of representing the Heritage Foundation and talking about it from a political point of view, he never brings it up because he's a policy guy. He's talking about marriage and family policy. And so back when the court cases were headed to the Supreme Court, they hadn't gotten there yet, and he was, I want to say, at Stanford University giving a talk on it, and his point of view from a policy standpoint. And in the Q&A, a self-professed gay college student got up and started throwing around the usual talking points. And Anderson asked him, okay, well, what's your limiting principle? Because this is something that was never really, not only was it never answered, it was never addressed. Because if you brought up okay, well, if gay marriage is allowable, then how about polyamorous marriage? How about bestiality? How about, anything really? I mean, the only thing that prevents, people even talked about pedophilia or pederasty or relationships with minors, so long as they were consenting. And oh, that's absurd! How dare you? And yet it's actually happening now. There have been a number of articles in, oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank on it. I probably should have brought that up, but there have been a number of articles recently trying to rehabilitate pedophilia as simply another sexual orientation. So, and this guy had no answer for him. And Anderson pointed out, well, look, if you can't articulate a limiting principle, then you're not advocating a principle. You're advocating special rights or circumstances for you. You want this thing to happen because you want it. So you have to be able to espouse a limiting principle. And since then, I've heard a few people kind of articulate limiting principles when it comes to gay marriage, but not a lot. And that's my point about limiting principle. I really think you can draw a straight line um from from the not from gay marriage, but from the way gay marriage was decided in the courts and the culture to the gender fluidity craziness we have right now. Because what you said was something that had been X, Y, or let's use something you've talked about. Where does 2 + 2 = 5 comes from? It comes from here. For the whole of human history, marriage was 1 + 2 = 3. Then the state came along and said, 1 + 1 or 2 + 2 is the same thing. So you've just said that 1 + 1 or 2 + 2 also equals 3.
Mm-hmm.
You've just thrown logic and history out the window without articulating why.
This is a hard one for me to jump in on because I'm actually on the side of the state should have no bearing over our marriage. We should be able to just declare next of kin, notarize it, and that take care of all the legal stuff. And anything that's marriage related should be personal, or through your church if you're religious, or through your community if
exactly. And that was my biggest frustration with the whole debate, is where it came from. I don't know if a lot of people know where one of the big cases, the one that came out of California, was based on inheritance, if I believe properly. Yeah, because this woman's female partner died, and so there was a court case over if it had been a normal marriage, if her husband had died, there wouldn't have been any issue, because it by default, by inheritance law, just everything goes to her. But because it wasn't a marriage, it was a civil union, and so that was what the case was all about. And it was infuriating to be yelling at the wind and saying, hold on, why are we talking about the marriage part of it instead of why is the state involved with this at all?
And well, that's part of the problem. And again, I've told you I can't go full on libertarian, but the state is involved in way too many things that should be our personal life, marriage being one of them. But I think that's where boundaries come in. I think that's where discourse comes in, because we could have had the gay rights talk and the people on the other side say, well, we're willing to maybe concede some of these points, but we got to make sure there's a place where this stops too, and people aren't marrying trees or buildings, which is happening now. And realistically, again, gaming the system, where we've got to do it in a way where someone can't piggyback onto the success of the movement, because a movement can be very legit, like the gay pride movement, or women's rights movements, or civil rights movements, which were big steps forward for everybody. But a big step can easily be, someone can slingshot off that momentum, and that's where we end up on the bottom of the slope.
I'm having a brain fart here. Who was the bad guy in Die Hard 3? Jeremy Irons. Irons. He made this point and got vilified for it. He was just making a logical point of basically what are your guardrails. At the time, in an interview where he said, well, if this is our new standard, then what's to stop a man from marrying his son? Not for any, sexual reason, but simply to bypass the usual inheritance laws, because there's uh, from parent to son, there are death taxes involved, but from spouse to spouse, it's not the same.
Mhm.
So what's to stop someone from having a marriage, as you say, purely? I mean, we already have this. This is why there's a long process uh, when it comes
Well, there's
to
a simple answer to that. Get rid of
citizenship.
the death tax, but
Exactly. Exactly. Why aren't we talking about the bigger issue? We get hung up on this thing. Another example would be uh well let's yell at the right for a second. Is all of the people who were uh infuriated at Obama's rhetoric and the way he was dividing people and the way he was ruling with executive orders rather than passing legislation. But then Trump comes along and it's okay because he's saying things I agree with and he's doing things I
Mhm.
want
Well,
done.
and then we got to right again when Biden came in, and it
Flip
just
it back over.
yeah, yeah.
Yep, yep.
Oh, executive orders are bad, but oh, you know what? Now our guys in
Executive orders are bad
use them
unless I
to
like it.
correct
Yep,
the ones that were bad from before. So uh, that's a
yep,
whole nother. Oh, we've had that discussion over and over again
yep.
with the dissonance involved there. But so back to the abortion argument.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we have this discussion as adults and avoid the slippery slope of, again, I'm fighting for abortion rights, but I don't want kids' heads being cut off on the way out of the womb. So
Which is a thing that happens.
mhm. So there's your slippery slope. We've gone down it. We've been at the bottom of the slope in some places.
Well, and as medical technology has progressed, the slope has gotten slipperier,
I think it's more
because
slippery.
whichever. It's certainly easier to say. Um, because uh, the preemie age is getting younger and younger. I
Mm.
don't remember what the record is right now, but it's 20 something weeks, and we're actually able to sustain that baby through that danger zone and into becoming a healthy child.
Well, I don't know. After our talk the other day, you talked about the way back when you can feel the baby kicking and
Mm-hmm,
stuff
mm-hmm.
was where they cut it off. That's actually about where I would start my argument debate, because that's at about 20 something, about 20 to 24
Yeah.
weeks is the first kicks. And you're actually getting human movement, you're getting human thought, you're getting memories, uh, you're developing synapses for the cognition, communication with the emotion. So the baby's feeling emotion, but at the same time developing a sense of what's proper emotion based on what's going on in the mother's body. So we've got a lot of things going on right at that time. So the many years ago, people that didn't have all the technology we had probably had it the most right. But again, I told you via text that I think I'm changing my mind on a few things.
What do you want? Do you want to go there, or do you want me to set up the um so what I mentioned last time was the Nazi T4 program,
Mhm.
and that was the genesis of the Holocaust.
I'm trying to get
Um,
rid of this alfalfa thing I got going on here. Sorry.
um
Maybe we'll just stick it all up. How about that?
yeah,
It's
that'll
still
make you
there. Dang,
that'll make you hip with the kids, so that'll help our demographic, I'm sure.
oh yeah.
Um, the so the T4 program, and I saw a lot of this when we were living in Germany, because we visited Dachau, which was one of the first concentration camps, because it started way before uh, Jews started going to the concentration camps following the Nuremberg race laws. Um, and it started with the mentally and physically unfit. the
Hmm.
mentally and physically deformed, as well as political prisoners. And, you know, one of the many disturbing things about the Nazis was how they were almost proud, certainly unapologetic about what they were doing, because it's sickening, the photographs that they had at Dachau of what was going on. Um, uh, the experiments that were done on these people, the medical experiments that were done, were just brutal. I mean, it was medieval torture basically, and then as well as then the extermination of these people, the killing of all of these people,
Hmm.
simply for being what was deemed unfit. And and the thing that was on my mind when I said that, let me bring this up here. Don't know how many people knew about this or were paying attention when it happened, but several years back, there was a story about how Iceland had pretty much eliminated Down syndrome. How? By aborting nearly 100% of all fetuses that tested. Well, I won't say tested positive because it's not quite that clear cut. There are what they call here a combination test. So they use ultrasound, blood test, mother's age, uh, to determine whether the fetus will have a chromosome abnormality.
Hmm.
Um, and the most common of which is Down syndrome. And the and Icelandic abortion law allows for abortions later if the fetus has an abnormality, and Down syndrome is considered in this category.
Hmm.
And this story made um, a lot of pro-life people stand up and say, "Hey, whoa, does this not disturb anybody? Is this the kind of society you want to live in? Do, do, doesn't this smack of Nazism to anybody else?"
Hmm.
And I never really heard a counter argument to it. The only thing you'll see if you just Google this, you'll see a lot of fact checking that say, "No, this isn't happening," which is really insidious, because what they mean is it's not purposeful. So there isn't a government program to do this.
It's
The only
just the population going along with
yes,
the, yeah.
the only government policy part of it is that uh, pregnant women have to be advised of these things. They have to be advised. They don't even have to be tested. That's not even part of government policy. But it is government policy that all pregnant women have to be advised that these tests are available. And but almost all pregnant women opt to have these tests. As it says here, around 80 to 85% choose to take the prenatal screening, and then almost all of them that come back positive are aborted. So that's one of the insidious ways that fact checkers distort fact to push an agenda. Is they'll take a little nugget of the story and say, "See, this isn't accurate, this isn't true," and say the whole thing's wrong. No, it's not wrong. Iceland, the society, whether it's government endorsed or not, is eradicating Down syndrome by eradicating babies that have Down syndrome. And to me, I don't see uh I don't really see much of a difference in doing that while the baby is in the womb versus right after it's born. So just suppose that we didn't have these prenatal tests and you had a test right after the child was born. And then you were allowed to say, "Well, you know what, I can't take care of that child. I don't want to take care of that child." Or in the eugenics movement of the early 1900s, which America was a big part of, that child would be better off not living, which is a big argument for, as I talked about last time, depending on whose numbers you look at, 80 to 90% of abortions are elective, and a lot of that is economic, which comes down to, well, a child would be better off not being born into poverty, not being born in uh, to a house with a single mother, not being born to a single mother who already has 4 children or whatever. That's the same argument that comes along after the child is born. So there's definitely a slippery slope, and it's not a fallacious slippery slope because it's happened. And not just, not just with the Nazis. It's happened a lot. It still happens in third world societies where it's just better off not having the child.
Or we go into societies where they limited the number of children.
Mm-hmm.
And so if a girl was born, she ended up being tossed off a cliff because they wanted a boy. And then you have whole societies where the boys way outnumber the girls because of this, and we ended up with a whole new problem.
Did it switch tabs?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a commentary piece on from back in 2018 when this story came out, and it's George F. Will, who's a conservative commentator, but also a big Cubs fan, so he's got that going for him. So a lot of people may just dismiss this, but I mean, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about discourse. We're talking about debate. You can disagree with him, but you need to be able to address his concerns. And he's quite acerbic here just in his opening line. Iceland must be pleased that it is close to success in its program of genocide. But before congratulating that nation on its final solution to the Down syndrome problem, perhaps it might answer a question. What is the problem? And so through the article, he's talking about children who have Down syndrome and the lives that they have and the families that they have, and asking, what's the problem here? Why can't these children be allowed to live? But the point he makes that I think is most cogent to the argument here is, now, before Iceland becomes snippy about the description of what it is doing, let's all try to think calmly about genocide without getting judgmental about it. It is simply the deliberate, systematic attempt to erase a category of people. So what one thinks about a genocide depends on what one thinks about the category involved. In Iceland's case, the category is people with Down syndrome. And again, this isn't new. It was in China with its one-child policy. It was girls. Sex selective abortions are still a big thing. They happen. That after the sex of the child has been determined, if it is a society that highly values male children and they don't want to have to take care of a female, they abort it. That is a thing that happens here in the United States among certain communities and around the world where abortion is allowable, or in the more extreme and grotesque case, as you say, you just take the girl and you throw her in the river.
Mm-hmm.
So what is your limiting principle, and how do you limit what is allowable so that we don't end up as a society that is permitting this, that is okay with this kind of attitude and action?
Well, here's my answer. Is the first step is to admit that as a country, we just need to have it legal. Because now you can get to the real discourse on the details. Now we discuss boundaries. Okay, we just got together, we started dating, and in the course of dating, we talk about the boundaries in our relationship, right? Mm-hmm. So okay, what's the worst and the best scenario, so we can go ahead and get those out of the way. But again, I think let me finish this thought first, and then I'll go on. The first problem is we're still in a pro versus not pro argument.
Mhm.
when realistically only about 8% of people on one side are completely 100% chop its head off on the way out pro, and only about 8% on the other side are completely 100% zygote on. So we've got to get out of the argument of the minorities, of the margins.
That
So,
goes for just about every argument we're having
well,
now.
yeah, that's kind of one of the themes of our whole freaking podcast. But
Yeah.
so that's the first step, is we have to say, okay, we are pro, but now let's set the boundaries and let's talk about the boundaries. And where I kind of switched my stance a little bit between last time and this time is, last time I was talking about a hard number. This many weeks and under, we're good. Anything goes. This many over, nothing goes. It should be a range, like under normal circumstances, this many weeks after you find out you're pregnant, you have to decide if you're going to keep it. And then there's a range to account for things. Oh, we didn't know that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so up to 12 weeks of pregnancy, I'm throwing out numbers here. These aren't my hard opinion numbers, but these are kind of reasonable numbers to start the discussion with. Up to 12 weeks of pregnancy, you're saying I want a baby or I don't want a baby after I know I'm pregnant. Okay. Then 12 to 24, things come up. Okay, they got a genetic anomaly where they can live in the womb, but they won't live as soon as they come out of the womb. Probably a legitimate abortion excuse, right? Because it's not going to live anyways, no matter what. We don't have the technology to save this baby. So why make the mother continue the course if it's just going to be born dead, right? So something like that. Okay, so now we have a range where we can make those decisions. But then the next step, based on what you just brought up, is what is considered allowable conditions. And we have to start drawing lines there. And that's where, and the problem is the discussion isn't around that. The discussion is for or against.
Yeah.
And as long as it's for or against, if the for wins, then those things slip in. They're the piggybacks on the movement. So when you start setting the boundaries, you get rid of the piggybacks, because it's like, oh, we're going to allow this, but at the same time, we're not going to allow all these other things to come in. And that's where the discussion should be centered. And we can go on all day. This and this and this and this condition creates little to no possibility of a viable life on the other end. Or this and this and this and this condition means the mother has such and such probability to die on the way through. So we can start talking about those, and we've got hard numbers for that, for most of them. And the longer time goes on, we can keep adding or subtracting from that list because we get better at what we do. Mm-hmm. I brought up my own situation last time. I was a very low probability baby. But nowadays, 20 years from now, people born with what I was born with are going to be more common, because it's an easy procedure for doctors now. It wasn't 41 years ago. So we can adjust that list as time goes on. So that's kind of the direction I started going down, kind of make it a range. Okay, so it's just my own personal choice. You got this long. All these other exceptions to the rules, we got a little bit longer window. And then we set the end of that window with whatever the worst cases are in those situations.
Well, before I get into my personal thoughts on that, I will say that you are right about the discourse and about the ignoring the extremes, because that's who runs the debate right now too much. Okay. Mm-hmm. Is the extreme on the pro-abortion side, and they are not pro-choice. The extremists are pro-abortion. They want abortion. They like abortion. And you can see that in their things like we talked about last time of born alive bills, opposing that, saying, the very rational argument of saying, look, if the fetus survives the abortion, it's not a fetus anymore. It's outside the body. It's alive. Mm-hmm. You have to give it.
That's the left example of that extreme, and you can see it clearly. So, Do you support a born alive bill? We can already tell who you are if you
Exactly.
don't. Okay, so
Exactly.
on the right, we got the other one. Do you support morning after pills?
I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
Yeah, if you
Um,
support morning after pills, you're the other extreme on the other side because you're a zygote person.
and and or is it? Oh yeah, and I could certainly sympathize with that because, as I've said, I think you need an objective line, and the most objective line is what makes us human is our DNA. So once you have that unique combination of DNA, you are a unique individual. Um,
This is where I disagree because I think you're a potentially unique individual. But
no,
until
the
the
DNA strands have been created.
yeah, but
Nothing.
there's so much that happens in the prenatal environment that determines whether that DNA expresses itself. So there's
No,
DNA combining, and
it
then
determines
there's
how it expresses itself. You talked in one of our fitness talks about how if your mother while she was pregnant didn't eat enough, that can slow your metabolism, right?
Mhm.
So there are things that impact
But
how.
how it expresses itself is still part of the humanity,
Yeah,
especially when we're developing from two little half cells to something that resembles a human
but that
being.
doesn't change the fact that you're a unique individual. It just changes what kind of unique individual you
We don't
are.
know if you're going to be a unique or you're a viable human at that point. You could replicate 5 times and die.
Okay, but now
Finish off.
now
You haven't even attached to the wall of the uterus
yeah,
yet.
yeah, but
Yeah.
now I think that you're making the argument you said not to make, which is the extremes. The likelihood of the not becoming a human is incredibly small when you especially when you look at the number of pregnancies that are had. And I was going to get to that in a second, but let me first gripe at the right for a second, because that's kind of one of my roles here. Is one of the things that gave us the gay rights movement we have today is how uh, rigid and slow the right was to embrace the idea of civil unions. If civil union, if the right would have said, okay, yeah, we can live with that. That's not a problem. You do you. Yeah, go live your life. Let's carve out a new thing within law and society that is the civil union to accommodate these people who who just want to live their lives differently. We can all live and let live that way. And if that had been I really feel like if that had been embraced in the 90s when that was first getting going on a state level, if that had been embraced as a public, as a federal platform by the Republican Party and the conservative movement, that we wouldn't be having the gay rights debates that we have right now, because that would be it would be obvious how extreme the extremists of the gay rights movement is, because people of all stripes would be looking at him going, what are you yelling about, dude? We've already got gay marriage. It's civil union, man. That's a thing. We've already done it. It's settled. And I think the same thing with the, as much as I sympathize and respect like the strongly conservative Catholics of where they're coming from, the fact that they are the most vocal and visual aspect of the movement has limited the amount of progress the movement can make. So I could see, when I was making my own argument about that objective line, I could see how someone would say, well, yeah, you're a hypocrite then, because you're willing to accept all of these exceptions and other things. No, I'm not. Saving some life is better than saving no life, which is where we're at now. Because no matter what the laws on the books are, as I explained last time, it is essentially abortion on demand all over the country. Because
Mm.
every time any kind of law has come up, it's been struck down or tossed out by the court. Um, as an analogy, uh, who was, I can't remember who called him this, but Lincoln was called a first-rate, third-rate abolitionist because he was willing to make a lot of compromises when it came to abolition. So slavery of a human being is abhorrent. It is one of the most grotesque things we have done to each other throughout the whole of our
Still do.
species, and still do. Yes, that's another thing that's infuriating is how where the racial movement that we've griped about is hung up on the slavery of 150 years ago. Meanwhile, it's literally happening still. Um, anyway,
Hold on. Just for those in the audience. Here you go. Human trafficking search. State-sponsored slavery, a North Korean export.
mm-hmm.
And the numbers involved are just unreal. So for those
Yeah,
that want to look that up, there you go.
and that's just one thing. That's just North Korea and its slave export.
Which has
You want to
a smaller population than Texas.
Yep. If you
Yeah.
really want to creep yourself out, go down a rabbit hole of sex slavery, of international sex slavery, and how disgusting that is. Um, but so back to the slavery analogy. If slavery is so abhorrent, which it is, isn't it better to do something than nothing? So the first kind of victory of the abolitionist movement was simply halting the spread of slavery. Isn't that better than nothing? So if your choice is nothing and let slavery continue to grow or at least contain it, isn't that a victory for our humanity?
Well, but the
So
problem is people don't understand complex systems. They also want to lose 30 pounds in a month with a pill.
mhm.
You know how that goes. So
Yeah. That's one of the reasons we bring fitness analogies into it so much, not just because that's what we do, that's what we want to help people with, but it also is such a great uh, illustration of our distortions in thinking that we all have, because so much of the faults in fitness are black and white thinking and all or nothing solutions, quick all or nothing solutions. And again, it isn't it better to lose 1 to 2 pounds of fat, like real fat, not water loss, 1 to 2 pounds per week, than gaining weight every week? Yeah, sure. You're not going to get that beach body in 60 days that the infomercial is selling you, but you're going to get something. You're going to be better off. You're going to be healthier.
I don't know who the original quote was, but an old client of mine used to say it all the time. That so this guy was a former CrossFitter. He would do regional competitions and stuff. He blew his patella tendon doing a competition because it was crazy jump squats, then front squats, and some stuff. And so he had that fixed, and then was looking around for just a better option. And he ended up at my gym, and he used to call it the promised land. But he used to. We ended up winning a CrossFit competition a few years after he was training with me, because he just kind of brought it to me. He was like, "Hey, I kind of want to do one again." And so we did one that was a buddy team thing. And my partner was 60 years old, and we came in the top quarter. And him and the partner I picked for him, which was a firefighter that I had working out with us, a young guy, they won the thing. So and we didn't do a single burpee going up to the competition. So it was kind of a little feather in our hat. But the long story short, he used to say this quote all the time: lasting positive change. All we look for is lasting positive change. So we could get a positive change, but it has to be something that's sustainable over time. And that's kind of been the theme for what I do. And it's made me someone who trains people to be badass over a long period of time. And they're in their 50s, in their 60s. For those that are on my social media, I posted a picture of one of my clients on his 60th birthday, and he looks obviously in his 20s when it comes to physique, and no testosterone treatment needed. But it's all about being process driven. And when you start thinking that way, you're like, oh, these are the real solutions.
Mhm.
and never, ever, ever, almost, I don't use absolutes, almost never is the result you want right away.
Mhm.
Because if you do that, then it's probably going to be something you can lose right away at the same time, which is the
Right.
problem with this whole
So,
movement. But
so pro-life, when I say pro-life people, I mean that broadly. I mean that much more broadly than it's used in the media or by the pro-abortion movement when they're labeling pro-life. I mean anyone who is concerned about developing life in the womb
mhm,
broadly, wherever you fall in that spectrum. Why in the heck can't you focus on
the ones you can save.
the ones you can save
Mhm.
and start with the easy victories? Born alive bills. Why isn't the pro-life movement putting all of their effort again? Why in the world, as much as I appreciate and approve of the concept of the heartbeat bill, it's also incredibly cynical from a pure politics point of view. As I
Mhm.
explained last time, it's pandering and it's not going to hold up. Why so much focus on heartbeat bills? Because there's a lot of them either in process or have
It's a,
just been passed.
it's a sneaky, it's kind of a sneaky fucker. It's trying to, it's kind of pretending to be something else to get its way, and it's putting a marker on something that they're saying we're gonna, it's got a heartbeat, it's a human being, it's putting a marker that people can empathize with onto a bill they know will cover almost anyone that gets pregnant because you don't know right away.
I think the number of sneaky fuckers are probably really small. Um, I think more of it is the people in the movement that are pushing this are just zealots, and I
Mhm.
don't mean that
Well, that's what
in a
I'm saying.
derogatory
They're
fashion.
not openly zealots though. That's why they're the sneaky fuckers.
No, I'm not talking about the politicians. I'm talking about the movement itself, the people who organize uh, and push this in a political way. I think the real sneaky fuckers are the politicians
Mhm.
because they have to know that this isn't going to last. This isn't going to be anything. This isn't going to stand up. This isn't going to be a victory
But
for the pro-life
the way
movement.
they use the verbiage and the rhetoric is kind of, politicians throw nets. They don't shoot at a target. They throw a
Mm-hmm,
net to,
mm-hmm.
to grab a range. So they know with this heartbeat bill they can grab the 100% complete pro-lifers, but they also can grab enough heartstrings that are a little bit more lenient to, again, the 12, 13 week kind of range, even though,
Yeah, but that's what I'm talking about. I don't think I shouldn't say all of them. I mean, there might be some, but I don't think most politicians care about that. I do think there are some in the movement. I know there are those in the movement that care about it. Simply because one of the billboards I've seen, I mean, driving across the country, and I don't remember which group puts these up, but it says abortion stops a beating heart. The point being, like I said last time, trying to get people to understand just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not real. So
what's the emotional grab? Because a beating heart does mean something to us because we're human beings, and
yeah,
we feel our own heartbeats, we feel the heartbeats of others. The pulse is how you check if somebody is alive, and so it does, just the fact that the pulse exists means something to us, and that's not arbitrary. It's I mean, it's life as we know it as
yeah.
adults in this world. Because if I go up to somebody who looks unconscious on the street and they have no pulse, I am going to respond differently than if the heart's beating and they're breathing,
Mhm.
which of the fetus is kind of breathing, but through different means than we could, measure ourselves. But a pulse, we understand.
Yeah.
A pulse is there. That heart is going. Doo, 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 doo. Uh,
Well, I think it occurs to me that my problem with the your emotional argument is that I don't think that's a bad thing.
Well,
Because
yeah. There are no good or bad things really in life. It's how they're used, and I
well,
think in this
mhm.
situation, they're being used in an improper, not improper. I'm not even gonna in a way to manipulate a broader group of people to support this thing. Does that make sense?
See, where I have a problem with your verbiage there is with the word manipulate, because that is a negative action. It's very hard to spin manipulate in a positive way.
Well, manipulate. Okay, so let me define manipulate. Using emotional triggers to bypass the cognitive thought, and by that definition, that would fit what I just said.
Yeah, but I think this is something we have trouble with, which is that you have to do that. See, we react emotionally in a very narrow range of situations.
Mhm.
And so it's frustrating to us to try and convince people, because the overwhelming majority of people aren't convinced by purely logical arguments. That's why you've got those books there.
Yeah, what the one I'm pointing at? You see it? Can you
No,
read it from there?
nope.
Free
What?
will.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So you have to make things, and this is something I've so here's an example I thought of the other day when I was just having my own little internal discussions, because I'm a crazy person and that's what I do.
15
Which
minutes,
is,
by the way.
yep.
15 minutes.
So try and do this quick. I think I brought it up earlier, the inheritance tax, and you said, why is the government involved in the first place? And to us, that's a very logical, philosophical, perfectly rational argument. But to a lot of people, that's not going to sway them. So let's put it another way. Let's make it personal. Why should I, because if the government is the people, why do I have a right to decide what you do with your estate? It's none of my damn business. If you want to leave all of your money to your spoiled kids, that's your business. If you want to leave all of your money to a charity, that's your business, even if it's a charity that I think is crap. Um, Planned Parenthood. I hate Planned Parenthood. I think they're evil, and I don't use that word lightly. If you want to leave all of your money to Planned Parenthood, which is uh, uh, technically a nonprofit organization, that's your business. If you want to leave all of your money to a super conservative Catholic pro-life group, that's your business. If you want to leave all your money to your cats, that's your business. What business do I have to stick my nose in there and say, you can't do that? That's not my damn business. That's what inheritance taxes are. That's what death taxes are. It's your neighbor sticking his nose in your business where it doesn't belong. That's how you have to make an emotional, personal argument, because too many people aren't going to be swayed by the rationality of, well, but all of this money has already been taxed once while that person was alive. Why are you taxing it a second time? Which is what
See,
the
see,
rational
but I
argument.
think the no business argument is also logical and rational, because if you just take a step back and don't
Yeah.
respond knee jerk to it, and it's like, yeah, they do have no business. You have no business for this and this and this and this reason, because it doesn't affect you.
Which leads right into what I was saying about the heartbeat argument is, yeah, there's a logic there. There is a heartbeat there.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to explain to someone that this is a life. We need to agree to that first, which is where we started last time, which is where the argument never goes, the debate never goes, is we have to agree first that that's even a life. Just
Mm-hmm.
forget the human life part of it. And that was what you added to the discussion of, when is it a human life? When does it have
Mm-hmm.
humanity? And it's not just, uh, t- taking out a tumor, which is also a clump of cells, you know? So to a certain extent, that is, well, not to a certain extent, that's life. If we found a cellular organism on Mars, we would say we have found life on Mars.
Yep. Let me see if I can briefly take this where I needed to go with the why we can go ahead and say, even though it is technically life, we should have a range that's above the heartbeat. And I'm going to go to the other end of the life cycle, and we're going to talk about pulling the plug. And when are we allowed to pull the plug on a relative that is basically dying? And usually that stems around the fact that they're no longer with us mentally. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Their heart's still beating, they're still breathing with some assistance, but they're not with us mentally, and they never will be again. And at that point, we can go ahead and pull the plug. And we are not murdering somebody. Nope, we are doing a service, right? So at that point, they don't even know that we are doing what we're doing to them. And so on the flip side, on the pre-born side, at what point do they know that we are doing something to them? And that's where I draw my line. And now I did change that to the range, because I do think that we should do that as early as possible, because people develop at different rates. And but we also need to account for things that come up later in a way that isn't going to incentivize doctors to give false diagnosis as well. So so we do need to account for that later. So an early range for, I just want or don't want the baby, which is going to give to the pro-choice crowd, which I hate that name, pro-choice. It's either pro-abortion or anti-abortion, but it's going to give them time in that range. But then it's also going to account for all the things that could go wrong along the way. And I think a nice little range there, because after a certain point, you're almost guaranteed. Almost. And so I think that's where the discussion should center around. What are the things we should be able to say is viable? Here's your range to figure that out. And here's your range to just make a choice based on all of your selfish needs as well. Because we have to account for that, because we are, as the United States of America, we are an organism as well. And we have to be able to account for the things that aren't necessarily 100% great, but at the same time, it allows us to function together. Does that make sense?
Yep. No, that makes perfect sense.
But there's a catch. In that range between it's just my 100% choice to other things can come up. This Down syndrome was actually what got me thinking about this. So I'm glad you brought that up too. So I didn't know he was going to bring up Down syndrome, but I was thinking about that because some people born with certain things they excel. Wasn't there just a Down syndrome kid that like a golf master or something like that? No. Yeah, there's all these stories of people who overcame. But then on the flip side, there are people who are miserable their entire life. And it's not something we can guarantee at the end of the day. But at the same time, so in that range of time, this is where I think, again, why I can't be full on libertarian, where government programs could come in handy, is we need to have something for parents of children that are lifelong responsibilities. Because that is a burden. It is a big burden.
Over and above the normal burden that children are.
Yeah. So, someone who's never going to be able to take care of themselves. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty clear marker. They're never going to be a true adult
They're never going to be able to fully take care of themselves. Yeah.
And those same children are going to be the ones that are really intensely difficult on the parents all the way up until. So we need something to help with that. Whether
That's why we have the term special needs, because these are special cases.
We need more to help with that. If we had more to help with that, then I think a lot less abortions would happen. So we're talking about saving what lives we can. If we had these programs that said, you know what, your kid is going to be born with this special case, and we want you to be part of their lives, but we're also going to provide nursing care, or, you know, such and such specialized child care to help you with the process, so you can still work, so you can still go out every once in a while, so you can be a functioning adult without being shackled to your house because of this kid. So those are programs that actually would be beneficial.
And I think, and this leads me to what I think is a good closing thought for me, which is, well, two parts. First of all, this is where you have to make that emotional appeal to people, to point out these are the things that that we can do, we should be doing. I shocked a friend of mine because most of my friends consider me ultra conservative, because I'm pretty libertarian on most things. And I don't know how we got on the subject, but we got on the subject of mental health, and I made a comment about how there should be much more government assistance when it comes to mental health, and he was shocked. And I was like, no, I think that's a perfectly legitimate government function, and it's why I hate the size of our government right now. Because if you weren't spending money teaching men in Africa how to wash their genitals, that's not an exaggeration, that's a real thing. I'll have to find a link for that. If we weren't spending money on crap like that, then we could do these things that most of us should be able to agree on, that most of us should be able to agree are worthwhile endeavors and legitimate government functions. So, you know, the second part to that is, you know, so let's focus on the things we can actually agree on, so we can actually make progress on some things. You know, pro-life people, focus on those things, like the Born Alive bill. Let's focus on something that we can all agree on and actually make progress, actually do something that improves us as a people and as a society.
Yeah.
Because I think that's far more important than, you know, I have counterpoints to just about everything you've said, that where philosophically I disagree with you on, you know, all of the pretty much all of the points you have made on your view on abortion. So what? Honestly, does making my counter arguments do anything other than fuel my own ego and make me feel better about myself because I have made a counter argument? Look at me.
Well, it depends on how you present them, because I'm a big boy. I can handle
It
it.
depends on how you present them. But for the purposes, I mean, if we were just sitting here drinking adult beverages by your fire and having a discussion, I would bring up those points. But we are ostensibly here for an audience, hopefully, eventually, maybe one day. And so for them, does it matter? Or is it more important to say, let's focus on the things we can agree on and then actually do something?
Yeah. Well, we're still going to have the free will discussion, because emotion does play a huge role in it. The difference is, and this is where I draw my line, is, are you creating just an emotional argument, or do you have substance behind the reaction you're trying to elicit?
Yeah.
And most of the time, in the things we're dealing with the media and the government and social media, our current interactions, especially online, because there's so little repercussions for a lot of people, is that the only thing that matters is the emotional reaction. And like you said, the ego. did I stroke my own ego by just trashing this person in my flame war? When realistically, the best discourse comes from uh, a stance of, I'm going to put the best face on your argument before I even answer. And sometimes that even takes time, which is hard to do in a live format too. So you have to sit there and think about it. That's why I like kind of how we broke this up this time, because I got to sit and outside and just think about it for a little bit and take my initial knee-jerk reaction out, and it actually changed my mind to some degree. I mean, it still didn't pull me all the way where you would want me to be, but it made it different. So yeah.
Go us. Well, I think we've solved this issue. Congratulations to us.
Yeah, we solved this issue. Yes, we've solved the abortion debate. This is the problem. How long has this debate been going? Since we were kids, right?
Well, Roe v. Wade was decided in the 70s. I want to say 72, but I'm terrible with dates after all the head injuries. But I'm pretty sure it was in the 70s. But of course, the debate was going on before that.
Yeah. Well,
so,
yeah.
But it became federal
in the current form.
Yes,
in the current form.
It became federalized and polarized after Roe v. Wade.
So before we were kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we're pretty old.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, sometimes my annoyance with politics as it is the fact that we never move on from any debate. We could be past, civil rights movement was monumentous, and then there was a long growing period after that. But if we just look at things the way they are in reality versus your critical consciousness, we could be beyond that debate. We wouldn't have to have quotas on Emmys because everybody would just be fucking getting along. But the abortion is one of those other ones where if we had just, like you said, let's focus on the things that are abhorrent in the bottom of the other slope, and let's work our way back up that slope instead of just trying to stand at the top of the hill. It would have been it would be done by now. It really would. And that's why I hate politics, because it's in their best interest to keep the arguments going.
Yep.
Again, one of the themes of our talks.
Well, I think that's where we should have our send off, because you have just made me think that where we should leave people is, as we usually say, something along the lines of go off and think. But truly, that's what this has been about. Go off and think. Steel man the other side, whatever the other side is for you. Steel man it, don't straw man it, and think through what that means to you. And then think through where your line is that, okay, well, at this point, we're just going to have to live and let live. Because at some point, you're not going to convince the other side, and you just have to live and let live. Okay, that person disagrees with you. So the hell what? Go live your life and let them live theirs.
Yeah, it's just really hard because some battles are worth fighting.
Yeah. And again, that's where I say you have to think through. I would say think even before you get into the argument, while you're thinking through your own ideas, your own side, your own logic, you also need to try and find the line for yourself. Okay. What, as we've been talking about abortion. So if you're staunchly pro-life, okay, but what can you live with? What can you be happy with and say, we have done good work here. And if we don't make any progress from my point of view, from this point on, I can live and let live. I can say, I think this is gross. I think this is immoral and you shouldn't be doing it, but I can live and let live after that point.
A closing thought. You know what'll save more lives than anything?
Making all speed limits 35 miles an hour.
Oh, I meant from abortion standpoint.
Okay.
Affluence.
Yeah.
We make our country richer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The statistics bear that out. All manner of statistics bear that out.
it also makes the environment better, by the way. So,
Hmm.
oh, darn that capitalism.
Darn it to heck.
Darn it to heck.
All right.
I will see you next time. I got to get back to work.
Yep. See y'all's.
Yep.